the system we're building, it doesn't necessarily exclude these big studios. I think right now, nobody is doing the prospecting, right? Like nobody is doing this original IP prospecting, casting a wide net and kind of, putting it, going an inch deep everywhere and saying, where's the gold, right? Like those studios aren't built for that. This system is built for that. And like I said, the great IPs were like, oh, I think we're hitting gold here. Let's go from 1 inch down to 2, 3, 4, many feet down. Okay, I like this one. Hebrew Studios do it. But eventually we're going to unearth way, way more great original IPs. And, those studios still have the capacity, the talent, the ability to bring these things to life. Disney and Warner Brothers and Netflix, they're going to come and say, oh, well, if Hebrew is where great original IP is coming because they're prospecting all the land, which is something that we can do, well, I'm going to dip into that pool and start participating in these new original IPs. And so it ends up being this prospecting layer where you've de-risked these original IPs to a point where they can go in and invest in them. And that's a win for everybody.
You've got people entering that brand at $1 price point and also people entering at $100,000 price point.
The goal is to make the Pudgy Penguin a cultural phenomenon.
Anytime we do anything, jobs never finish.
I'm not the founder I was yesterday, so I have to be better. And then 9 months later, Trump.
Quarter one, we reported about $19 million revenue.
Started with YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels and TikToks. That's done incredibly well for us.
Brendan created the JavaScript language in 10 days.
We have invested a significant amount in X because we believe that this is the platform that this ecosystem exists in.
To date, we have over 540 portfolio investments.
For me, success as an entrepreneur is survival.
I was actually brought in to change the direction.
I then kind of turned it back to him. I said, well, if somebody could solve that problem, would you pay them?
Andrew, it's been, dude, we're how can I put this? We're in the thick of things right now. We are definitely in the thick of things right now. You didn't leave the office yesterday till what, 7 or 8?
I did. I mean, no, I left at 9, but I mean, that's not. I feel like new generation is like, dude, like, oh my god, you work from the office the whole day? It's like, yeah, I did that like every day, weekends included, for like a decade. Maybe not every weekend. I'm not crazy, but that was par for the course. But no, I love it. Dude, you're here by yourself at like 6:30, 7 p.m. all the way for a couple of hours. That's like so much work gets done, dude. That's where all the magic happens.
So, what were you doing last night at 7, 8?
I was working on announcements for this week. They needed stuff for my account. They needed me to write some things. I needed to walk the guys through the structure on like that Hebrew system and everything that we've anticipated. So that they understand. And then there's announcements for Hebrew, but there's also the announcement for so all of that stuff. And then there's the actual company stuff. So part of like the reorganization of the actual studio, which we've been working on for months, I had to supply a bunch of like org charts and sort of presumptive structural things for the lawyers. All that kind of stuff.
Is your one pager done for Thursday?
So I wrote it yesterday. I mean, I started it like last week, obviously. But when you like draft something, then you read it back, you're like, I don't know. And then I had different versions of it. Like some were like more romanticized, some were more like to the point.
Yeah.
And the one that I kind of like worked through yesterday was sort of like a half and half, like literally half and half. Like the first bit is like very, very, call it romantic and story-esque. And it hits for me, but I sent it to Blake and I'm like, this is either fire, like it's going to be so strong, or people are going to think I'm a lunatic and it's going to like fail completely. Give it a read and tell me what you think. I could show it to you. I don't know.
Yeah, you can read it because this is going to air on Thursday.
Okay. So I'm going to read So I'm going to read what I wrote, and whether or not this is what goes out or not, we'll do. Okay. So I'm going to read it, but it starts with a quote. I really do like quotes.
Yeah,
at least for me, they're quite inspiring. So you're laughing, but I think a lot of people it resonates because sometimes you get advice or stuff from people that perhaps are like less, I don't know, like not less, but just I don't know. I like to hear. Sometimes it's interesting when you hear something from like someone who's like a lot older, like historically, like like Napoleon or like a philosopher, or in this case, the quote I took is from Ernest Hemingway, and the quote, it starts like this. So the title is Announcing Hebrew. And this is something that is a heuristic that I've used ever since I wrote this. It comes from A Movable Feast, which is one of Ernest Hemingway's most famous books. And it goes, write the truest sentence that you know and go from there. And I've always thought to myself, whenever I get like writer's block, I'm always like, okay, just write the truest sentence that you know. That unlocks a lot because like sometimes you're overthinking, but if you just write the absolute truest thing inside of your soul, you're writing to yourself. And then, so I put that there, and then I get into this romantic bit. So I'll read it from there. So I say, okay, I'm going to read it. Announcing Hubu, write the truest sentence that you know and go from there. Ernest Hemingway. I read these words more than a decade ago, and they've never left me. I imagine Hemingway staring from his apartment window over a cool and cloudy Paris, fire crackling beside him, peeling his orange almost angrily. A man with so much to say, but who couldn't find the words, frustrated not by a lack of talent, but by an abundance of it. We belong to an era looking out its own window, orange in hand, and bits of peel under our nails. We live at a time bursting with talent and creativity, bottled up by an aging industry that no longer knows how to uncork it. Storytelling is at the heart of our humanity and culture, yet it has become an industry owned by only a few. While the industry once served as progress, from radio to video on demand in our pockets, today it is failing us. Generations are stuck watching short-form video slop, sequels of deteriorating franchises, and shows iterated from toys to cars. Stories are the architecture of meaning. They teach us who we are and who we might become. The best stories of our generation aren't being told. Today we are announcing Hibu, a launchpad that connects creators with fans and the capital resources to bring original stories to life. Original stories bear too much risk to be traditionally investable, yet there is an abundance of talent and audiences begging for new stories. The question is, how does talent attract the resources it needs? Hibu recognizes that fans are the critical piece to success. Fans offer the signal needed to dictate which stories we want to hear and where capital should be spent. They are the marketing engine that perpetuates stories to wider audiences, creating the cultural resonance that transforms content into movements. Hibu rewards them with material ownership in the properties they help build. When fans have skin in the game, their passion becomes participation, their enthusiasm becomes validation, their collective judgment outperforms any executive committee's guess about what will resonate. We're building a new model where three forces align. Creators receive funding as their stories prove market demand, earning ownership through their creative work instead of pitching to gatekeepers. Fans own a piece of the stories they love, rewarded for the authentic support they're already giving. Capital flows to projects with genuine audience demand where community validation drives investment. This isn't crowdfunding. This is a fundamental restructuring of a market in distress. It is the next iteration of an economic model that is not considered an asset class whose value is determined by the community. It is food for the soul at a time when we are starved. The window is open, the orange is in your hand. Now we write the truest stories we know together.
I would almost flip the quote, by the way. I wouldn't put the quote first. I'd put it supplement in the middle or the end of it.
But I messed around with it in that exact way, and every time I did it, you didn't get the bookends. So I did. I know what you're saying. I had the same instinct, and I was like, okay, let me.
Because like the first thing is like I would hate to release a statement and like the first thing to hear is another man's voice. It's like Andrew releases a statement, first thing to hear is Andrew's voice, then and then quote to supplement what you're saying, and then you back up the quote, and then the rest goes down.
I see what you're saying. That's not why I would mess around with it. But you know, I did mess around with it so that the first bit would be today we are announcing Hibu. I mean, that's kind of what the document is for. But then as I was kind of anticipating what someone would do here is, well, the title is announcing Hibu, right? Like it says announcing Hibu. So you've got that right off the cuff, right? Like, you know, and my signature's at the bottom. So just when you look, if you zoom out and look at the document, which is how everyone starts single page, you'll see announcing Hibu, Hibu letterhead, my signature at the bottom. So you've already captured the essence of who's writing this, what it's going to. And then the first thing you actually read as a narrative piece, let's say, is that quote.
I don't like that.
Let's see what Blake says. I mean, I don't disagree. My point is not that you're wrong, but every time I iterated,
it's all subjective.
Whenever I iterated with it in the middle or somewhere like you described, because I did it for a bit, I kept getting to this place where I'm like, it just doesn't hit as emphatically as I would like it to.
What if you put it at the end? Like it was almost like
I tried that too.
It was almost
and
like wrapping it up.
I tried that too, and
It's kind of like you're taking a little bow at the end of the show, and like
it kind of works, but I worry that people will kind of read the Hebrew does this, this, and this, and then you get into the romantic bit. You're like, I don't give a shit. I think everyone reads differently, right? So I don't know. Let's see what Blake says. You give him your notes. Tell him you read it with me on the pod, and see what he says. And I'm open to feedback. I can mess around with it.
Yeah, no, that's why. That's why it's a you. I'll say this: it's a you statement, though. It is definitely a you statement. Take that as you will.
No one ever remembers the CEO or the founder or
that's not
they
true.
They remember the person. No,
the both true.
No one says, oh, this guy was great because he was the CEO, or this guy was great because of this or that. So it's they remember you for you. So the first principle of like being a leader and doing interesting things and changing the world is just be you. You're not going to change anything or create anything of value by trying to always be someone else.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Nonetheless, that's a bit of an intense statement for a freaking single one-pager. I am open to changing it. You just give people
imposter syndrome. Thank you so much. You give all the viewers imposter syndrome. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm actually saying the opposite. What imposter syndrome? Be yourself. Like, be the imposter.
Yeah, but sometimes being themselves is not enough.
That's not true. I think sometimes people expect to have an immediate reaction to them being themselves, where it's like, oh, I did this thing and I didn't get any reaction. It's like, well, I've been doing this for 15 years. Day one, I was a weirdo.
Like, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I agree with that. It's kind of like a little bit of a.
I say 15 years professionally. I've been being myself for 36 years.
Well, some people just started that last year, so so it's a little bit. You got a little bit of an edge on them.
I should be. I know. I mean, obviously, everyone grows up. Probably when you're like a teenager, you're more like, no. But when I was a teenager, I wasn't being myself. I was like, how do I fit in? How do I be cool?
Yeah, but some people go their whole life doing that, though. Just so you know.
I think what I've learned is that everyone kind of matures to a point and then stops, and then some people mature and they get stuck there, and some people mature into this level and they get stuck there. And I've met folks who are that's not necessarily determinant of your success. But I've met folks who are like they've got kids, they're in their 40s, 50s, and then you're like, I could tell you're kind of like stuck at like 25, or you're stuck at like 19, which is fine. And in many ways, ignorance is bliss, maybe. But I think sometimes it's not, I don't know. I'm probably stuck somewhere too. I just don't even know. Easier to judge someone else than judge yourself.
You're stuck at 70, though, the quotes you're putting out weekly.
I'm stuck at 70. I'm a kid at heart, man. I'm a kid at heart. I think that's an important thing too. Is like, don't take it all so seriously.
I agree with that. I agree with that too. Yeah. Taking life too seriously is a way to, not have fun and actually, go the inverse.
Right.
The people are curious. I mean, I already know this answer, but what's the purpose of Hebrew?
Well, I just read that thing. I don't know if you're gonna put that in the pod or not, but the purpose is really there's different ways to approach it and how to explain it. I mean, there's a human purpose, which is original storytelling. And just from like a humanity perspective, I truly believe that there's just not original stories coming to market anymore. And while I think that's a consequence of commercializing storytelling, which has happened over only the last 100 years, and it really wasn't a commercial activity before that. And it brought us a lot of interesting and great success or great progress, I should say. There's a human element of like people aren't telling stories to one another anymore. And like it is, I think, important for humanity for people to have stories that resonate, inspire, and kind of bring people together, or even at an individual level, like something that, like I said, is inspiring or something that you learn from, or you're like people pass their morals down through stories and stuff like that. So I think that's sort of the altruistic sort of human element. But then from a business perspective, you've got the same thing happening where there's demand for original storytelling, and big studios, Disney, Netflix, and so on, are spending billions of dollars per year investing in content. And not long ago, they were investing, in sequels and iterative content and original storytelling. And that ratio has gone ever more towards this iterative sequence of building on top of the same franchises, or taking existing brands and sort of telling the same stories over, or forcing these longer, sequels that start to become a little tired. And while some of those are great, it's coming at the cost of these original stories. And from a commercial perspective, you've got a huge vacuum of the market that nobody's investing in, and it's a huge opportunity. And I think people often forget or don't realize that entertainment is a massive market. I mean, those studios are spending, like, just Disney spends $2.5 billion per year on new content, Netflix $3.5 billion, and that's just two studios. I mean, there's other people spending, and the whole entertainment space is a $3 trillion market per year. That obviously includes gaming and other things, but all of these things are important. And so there's a huge vacuum of opportunity in telling original stories, and it's not being captured. And the reason for that is, I think it's impossible for a big studio to invest capital into a project that has no forecastability and this asymmetric risk return profile, which is you've got to invest lots and lots of money and you have no idea what the outcome is going to be, right? It could be a straight donut, or it could be $1 billion property, and more because of the competition through open distribution on streaming, on YouTube, and then gaming and all these other places, the original content risk return profile is even more risky than normal. Even more risky than it used to be. So it's an impossible thing to invest in if you're running a company that's, naturally a for-profit company. So that's one issue, is that the capital is not going towards these things because it's just not an investment profile that is investable. And then the second, which I just touched on, is that it's something that that I think fans and community actually solves for, because the fans in the community have always been taken for granted in the holding, carrying the torch for the big franchises that exist today, and the stories that we've told in the past. And today, because of all of the competition and all of the different content avenues and all the things people absorb, you don't develop fans or community around new properties or new stories because attention is scarce and so on and so forth. So you've got to innovate on two things. One, how do you allocate the risk for those capital investments in such a way that this becomes an investable asset class? And two, how do you empower the storytelling and the navigation of this competition by including the fans who actually do believe in or are the best signal in whether or not it's a story that people want to hear? And I'm using the word story, but we can interchange that with IP, with property, with brand. A great story can translate into those things as well. And you can have great stories and commercial success, but you've got to recognize that you need to solve for these things. And that's what Hibu does. It solves for those things in a very eloquent way that, honestly, it's something that's only possible on blockchain, in my opinion. Obviously, I mean, pretty.
Do you know what the best thing about Hibu is, Andrew?
Please go, rip it.
The guys that are building it are the ones that suffer from the exact same problem.
Exactly. Well, this is how we discovered it. It's not like I joined these guys at Klano in late 22 with this idea in mind. It was sort of like, okay, they've had success, they've done this thing, let's make Klano successful. But then along that path and along that trajectory, we're sort of like discovering all these things. And in a sense, people are asking us, like, how is Klano so successful? How did it bootstrap itself? How does it raise capital? How do you have all these fans from day one? You don't have a show, you don't have a movie, you don't have anything that traditionally is the tentpole for your franchise. And so, as we very quickly after we kind of realized this, we started thinking about how do you scale this? There's something here that's really, really special. Is it scalable at all? Maybe it's a spark in the pan and Klanosaurus is just the next Pokemon because we right place, right time with a great team and a kick-ass community. And that's it. You just scale this like Pokemon, make it huge. And I think Klanosaurus has that opportunity to do that with a digital first approach, community approach, and we're doing all those things. But through that scaling question, that journey has been, I don't know if it's scalable. Maybe this works, but that part's not scalable. All the way through to this is maybe now a year and a half, 2 years later, we're like, now I see how it's scalable. But that comes through a lot of conversations with existing studios, existing creators, our own team, our own discovery of community and how to nurture and build that into something more powerful, et cetera, et cetera. So that journey brings us to this solution.
Let me ask about the solution though. Mechanically, what is Hibu going to be doing mechanically? You described what it is, but from a mechanical standpoint, what is it going to be doing when it comes to functionality?
Yeah, so he was going to be a launch pad for new IPs. I know launch pad is one of those terms in Web3 that's super hot right now, and everyone's doing a launch pad. I think this is something that's a little bit more specific, but a fine-tuned approach. So for one, what it needs to look like and what it will feel like to everybody is sort of like Robinhood meets Netflix, where you get on there, you can see what people are working on, and you can fund new projects, participate in them from a capital perspective. Only the projects that are actually naturally the crowd will move towards the project they want to see get built, right? So on Patreon and Kickstarter, the projects that accrue the most capital are the ones that actually people want to participate in. They want to be a fan of, they want to have the product. So you actually get this signal of whether or not the IP is worth pursuing in the first place alongside the capital. And then the same thing happens on the fan side, where the fans, who maybe you don't have to invest to participate because a fan adds a lot of value, the fans will participate in the IPs that they like the most, right? And those fans, especially the early ones, will also be rewarded with their own buy-in and ownership inside of the brand, because we recognize that without the fans, you don't have a brand at all. And because it's so competitive, and because of this, all of the noise around us from social media to gaming, you need to have fans who actually perpetuate the IP, not because they have buy-in, but because they like it, and one coincides with the other. So what we're solving for is a launch pad, and then you don't want every single person to be able to just post things on there. We have to be like quite.
How are you going to filter? How are you going to filter through? How are you going to filter through?
The filter comes from Hebrew itself. So Hebrew will have its own token for this, which will do a few things, but it'll be a governance token alongside some other rights and things like that to participate in specific things. But you need to basically redistribute Hebrew token with the underlying principle of like, these are the people who are tastemakers, who have participated early in Plano and who have participated in our ecosystem. And these are people who understand this IP stuff. That might also go towards new partners, whether it's studios and stuff like that, investors who have the same frame of thought. And that governance layer is basically saying, okay, here is a studio that's done this, and that. They meet the criteria that we set forth to have them post IP. Or maybe it happens at the IP level at first. Well, it's like, okay, they don't have full reign to post whatever they want, but the IP they're proposing to post flows through that governance layer. Because otherwise, you don't want to have people logging on to, like I said, Netflix meets Robinhood, and 99 out of 100 of the opportunities are just slop. And there's tons of launch pads.
It's not even slop. It's just too much. There's just too many. There's just too much to watch.
Yeah,
like it's sad. Right. Like it's oversaturation where it's like I can't control my next urge.
Right.
And you need a supply.
I think also what you see with other launch pads like meme coin launch pads and things like that, and even NFT launch pads in the past, I mean, they still exist, is that when it's open like that, you start to get a lot of folks who just they want to game and abuse the system a little bit.
Yep.
And that's just natural. I mean, that's how markets work, right? Yep. So you want to filter out that stuff so that people have a principal expectation that if I do fund this, I know that the team behind it and the property behind it is, they own the IP, it's well organized, and the people who are actually doing it are qualified as judged by this governing body who has the aptitude to do that. On day one, when you distribute the token, you probably have treasury and team, and a lot of it sits inside of the control of Hebrew. And that's us kind of saying, well, we do know how to do this, but you distribute that token over time into these tastemakers and into this governance layer that becomes ever more decentralized and ever more democratic. And then those people will decide over time, right? Sort of like you start a fresh blockchain, you have a foundation that kind of controls everything, and then the foundation kind of dissolves and you let the economy run itself.
Or do you think is a studio more likely to incubate IP within crypto or outside of crypto?
I think that the beauty of the system is that it's meritocratic. And I think what happens is, we're talking about stories, we're talking about IP, and we're talking about like a brand. And I think that can come from crypto, where we do see tons of great brands emerge. And it can come from outside of crypto, where you've got a ton of creative talent that has this literally pent up stories that we see ourselves that aren't being told, that sit in a drawer. So I think it comes from both avenues. And I don't think it's restricted to either. And I actually don't think there needs to be a bifurcation between Web3 and not Web3. It's just the quality of the story and whether or not people believe that it's something they want to see.
Is the studio going to be taking, I guess, IPs or like IPs product stories from like 0 to 1, or is it going to be like more so on a 1 to variable basis?
So what we want to do is, so we're going to have Hebrew, and we're going to have this platform launchpad, and we're going to have Hebrew Studios. And Hebrew Studios will continue to manage Claynosaurs and the other IPs that we're working on, which will also plug into this platform. And like I was saying earlier, this token, the Hebrew token, will not just be a governance token, it'll also be a right of first refusal on the first IPs. So in a world in which this platform and launchpad is generating the best original stories, you're going to want to have access to the ones that people want to see most, if you're Disney, Netflix, Warner Brothers, and so on. So what we're saying is, well, at first, we're going to have that control, which frankly, and we'll take the ones that we want to help and that we think it's worth investing in and doing. So some of those will be ones that we white glove and bring into Hebrew Studios in that manner. Some of them, and I can tell you right now, we're talking to big studios who are excited by the platform and would love to participate and put some of their own IP up on there. They don't necessarily need our help. And so sometimes you don't need to have two cooks in the kitchen. And I think you just, if it's, you let them run. And I think it's a matter of balancing it there, right?
So you guys will not be providing, I guess you guys will say, I see we now, I guess we won't be providing any like infrastructure support to any of the IPs from a business standpoint, or is it more just from a launchpad point of view?
Well, so the launchpad should have not only all the stuff that I described, which I think is the magic of the system, but it also needs to have tooling to, educate and direct these new creative teams. Part of that tooling needs to be understanding of one of the things that people don't do right now, for instance, is like they take money from an IP to build it. They kind of go quiet for a couple of years. They build it. So one of the things they need to be educated on is, you need to be sharing constantly. One of the things we've learned through Clayno is like, if you're asking people to participate in this IP as a fan, as an investor, whatever, they want to know what's going on. And it's actually ironic because of any asset class in the world, the one in which you could actually share what you're doing on an ongoing basis that people would actually enjoy and be able to judge is like entertainment, right? You could share the drawings, share the stories. Anyone can digest that. Very different from if I'm doing like an infrastructure project. I'm like, oh, the bridge is halfway built now, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can share this and people don't. And I think that's one of the things they need to be educated on. And there's going to be tooling for that. And part of the tooling we want to create is also tools for the fans to do, user generated content. Even sort of like, I don't want to sound cliche, but AI agents to sort of maybe help on some of the legal innuendo and questions. Now, obviously, AI agents not going to give you a legal opinion, but a little bit of directionality in that regard. Also, the market, right? Because if you're going to launch a token, it's trading. The average team might not really understand why the token's going up or down. So what this is kind of what helped us at Clayno is like, oh my God, chart down, people upset. What do? We dove into the community. We talked to people. We figured it out. So some directionality for them to understand, well, what's affecting the chart? Does it mean that the last thing they released sucked? Or does it mean that actually the market is down? And, so there needs to be some, again, AI tooling there. And all of this, including all the data that we've aggregated with Clayno on chain and all the data we'll continue to aggregate inside of this system will represent itself in what we're calling a fan intelligence system, which I think is critically important, especially as you fast forward to the future, because right now it's obvious that there's going to be production tooling powered by AI where you can prompt it and then put out a show in 15 minutes. And then evermore, that's going to get better and better. And so the question is not going to be like, who's going to win the production tooling battle? People are already way ahead on that front. And I don't think there's going to be one winner, but there's going to be different people who are great at what they do or different products. And all of these products, I think, are useful, but you still need to have an artist of human brain controlling the story and so on. So these are empowering tools. But the question in that kind of world where anyone can create anything is not how do you create it? It's what do people want? So the fan intelligence system is like a second degree AI system that is aggregating all this fan data that's on chain. And on chain data also means like you're taking from places that aren't just on chain and you're bringing it into the system. So think about social media dashboards and going through comments and understanding what's botted, what's not botted, what's worth listening to, what's not. All of that tooling should be inside of there as well. And that's a fan intelligence system that is an additionality to this whole capital formation platform I described, which also helps you direct what to do, what not to do, and create, the best stories. So all of the tooling to empower those creators will be in there. I think in the first iteration, realistically, you're probably starting with a launch pad with some limited tooling.
Sure.
And then over time, you're building out these tools and so on.
I've expressed this to you probably. I think the name's fantastic, by the way. Like the name, obviously I'm very biased, but the name I think is really good.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big name guy. Obviously, we share the same name, so we're both big name guys. But I think the name, like it just being like that with that many letters, it is really good. And it's funny because you probably didn't even catch on this, but I tweeted "Good morning" with a purple hoodie this morning.
I saw it, but I didn't catch on to anything. Oh, duh.
Sometimes we do things that make sense. You mentioned Klano as well before, and I also posted a tweet 2 days ago with the badge, and it did about 35K impressions, and it shouldn't have done that. I don't know why I did that for whatever reason.
Is that a lot?
Yeah, I guess. Like I literally just said like new badge, and like I don't know, impressions went up.
Wait, I'm gonna check because I thought you were a popular guy. That's a lot of impressions.
Yeah, but not for an announcement that I've already made 6 months ago.
Oh, you pinned it, dummy.
No, I know, but I pinned it because it did that well. So I was
I was gonna say if you pin it, it's gonna outperform.
I know.
Yeah, it's true. Your impressions are not as high as they should be for your account following.
No, the ratio sucks the more you move up. Impressions, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm getting an education in real time here. I don't.
Yeah,
mean to put you on blast.
the more cycles you're here for, the more dead followers you have, and the more you move up, the worse the ratio becomes.
Okay, I feel you.
Yeah.
Well, this is what you told me. I was telling you how do I improve my presence and do this stuff on Twitter, and I was like, oh, get more followers. You're like, no, it's just about impressions, right? So,
well, I mean,
which makes sense.
It's both. So it's followers for the cycle, but then every cycle there's dead followers.
But so ultimately, your follower count is a reflection of what your impressions may be. But impressions is like the level 1 data. Like I want to impress upon people my message.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Look at some of the guys that are like 500,000 range. Like their impressions are like literally like 2%, 5%.
It's funny. I've had, someone follows you sometimes and you like check who it is.
Yeah.
And I've had people who follow me who I've never heard of, who've got like, 6-figure followers. And then you go check their page and like their posts do like less than 1,000 impressions.
Yeah,
I know. That's like a botted account.
How many are they following though? Like,
I don't remember the data.
Because if they're following anything above like 10K, it's a little bit iffy, to be honest. Like
I just assume these are like botted accounts or something.
Yeah.
Like if you got that many followers, but only sub 1% of them are even reading your stuff.
Yeah. It is. It's a tricky thing. Is everyone leaves every cycle, so a lot of
actually, this is one of the things I think is really interesting is this botted stuff. Like it happens on Twitter, obviously, it happens on all social media, and when you speak to like big studios who are trying to get into social media, they want to, partner with big social media brands and so on and so forth. I don't think that anybody at that level is like really auditing what's real or not. And they're basically saying, okay, this account on YouTube has 1 billion views, and they're not actually checking the quality of those views like properly.
Yeah.
And they're just saying, oh, 1 billion views. Even if I take a de minimis convert, I know that I can convert them into a TV show and then they can sell stuff. And I think there's a gap there where people are like not auditing or, that data.
Yep.
Which is, again, I think is an important part to our own system at Hebrew, which is knowing what comments and what data is real versus not is really important. And I know when I speak to the guys on the social media side, like they'll go through the actual comments and they've got the natural eye to say, okay, I know these are botted, but these ones are actual really great feedback.
Yeah.
So you kind of need a system for these creative teams on the platform to also understand that, either understand it or have that system tell you like, this is a comment that's reoccurring on this clip that tells us that you shouldn't do this or you should do this. And all the other comments that maybe you saw directly they're not relevant for these other reasons, right?
The funny thing is too is that Nick was getting tagged the other day, and like similar posts that I was getting tagged. Like people are calling me their favorite podcaster. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but they're also calling Nick their favorite founder. Yeah, the one thing I was saying, I hate giving you flowers because I never give any back.
I never give any back. Get out of here!
I knew that was gonna piss you off. That's why I
get out of here.
I knew that was gonna stir you.
Every time you're self-deprecating, I always throw you flowers. I got you. Don't worry. But here, throw me some flowers. I'll throw them back.
This, John, I'll say this on like live. One of Andrew's hidden talents that like I've like known the past like 2-3 weeks of being like full time is that he has a fantastic ability of remembering like every detail, every logistic, and he won't write this stuff down. By the way, like I'll just tell him stuff, and he'll keep it all in his head, and he won't write this stuff down. And I'm like, I told you that last week. Did you write it down? He's like, no, but I remember it. We'll talk about that same thing next week. He'll bring it up. I'm like, did you write it down anywhere? He's like, no, I just remembered it. You're really great at compartmentalizing. That itself is the term.
Yep. I think you're right. It's also, as leading the firm, sometimes it affects communication, organization. And I'll tell you, when we were getting bigger from, 5, 10 people to now we're like, 40 plus, 45 plus, having it all in my head is great. But then everyone's like, what's going on? I'm like, trust me, I know. It doesn't really empower the team. But now we've got people around us that are far more organized who can do that. So I think everybody is probably better. I'm not badly organized, but I'm not organized. I don't organize myself in such a way to distribute that knowledge properly. Fair. So they keep me honest, which is good.
Yep.
But that's also a big part of it. You have to realize what you're not good at, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of the guys, we operate better in chaos. I was telling Sasha this like last week. I'm like, you and I operate better in a little bit of chaos. Let's get more structured. And
by the way, you say I don't write things down. Actually, I do. I write everything down in these notebooks. And I've got, actually, for 15 years of my career, I've got stacks of these at home. And I refer back to them maybe 1% of the time. But just by writing, it puts things into your memory. So that
is true as well.
I can barely read my own writing half the time and stuff.
I can't either.
But it's just because I put it to memory by writing it, it helps.
I can't either. You mentioned Klano earlier. I mentioned like the fact that the post went like did impressions for like just getting a badge. Yeah. I guess a lot of people didn't know that I was on the team capacity, which is fine. How does Hibu directly impact Klano, and like what's the benefit for the holders?
Oh, I think I touched on it on distribution. So okay, let's go through the ideology, and then it'll be an easy application case for Klano. So the ideology behind the whole thing is that early fans are the reason for your success, and they should materially participate in that upside, right? So on that principle alone, it goes without saying that our fans, as judged by the things that we've offered for them to participate in so far, which is predominantly these digital collectibles, but it's also like the events and the pop, it's like these different things. They should be getting a material portion of the underlying brand, and that's equitable. And I think that is like a real business buy-in. So that's the first principle. And I think this is something that we're working towards, that we've said, softly, but we want to get into the hands of our fans actual buy-in for this company, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to build it. That's the first thing. And that's kind of the principle across all of these new IPs that I think is new from even an economic perspective, where you're like, you're going to give away part of the company, not to the capital providers, not to the team working on it, but to these outside parties. And therein lies this difference, where it's not outside parties. It's an asset class that only survives through the community. And the community is not an outside party. Sure, technically speaking it is, but these are real participants in the asset, if I speak about it financially, that without them, that asset doesn't have the same value. So you're conferring that value back to them through, frankly, this is where tokens come in handy, through tokens and equity and connecting that value into them. So that's the first principle that applies to Klanosaurus first and foremost. And the second one is at this Hibu level, right? Which is the governance token, and the right of first refusal token, that will be the Hibu token, is one that requires distribution to an ecosystem of people that are tastemakers, fans, creators, that, this is where I think tokenomics sometimes falls flat, depending on what you're trying to achieve, is that you're trying to kind of cold start an economy. You want people in that economy to be given the token in order to participate in it, not to just toss it into a chart, make some money and leave. And because we've spent so much time with our community building Klanosaurs, we know that these are people who are fans, they're diehards, but they're also fans of IP. A lot of these folks give us feedback in Discord and Telegram, in person, on meetings and email. These are the kinds of people you want inside that system, right? So at the Hibu level, it makes a ton of sense to be distributing token to these folks, because they're participants in this micro ecosystem that is just Klanosaurus today, but is effectively what we're going to do at the Hibu level. And who better to dictate, well, what should or shouldn't be on this platform, and who better to have the first right to invest in the coolest new original IPs coming out than the folks who were here early, participated in the growth of this original brand, and understand this larger endeavor. So for Claynosaurs, it's a thing where all of the stuff I'm saying applies into Clayno. At the Hebrew level, this is something where this is the only collection, or our Claynosaurs collections across them all. This is the only brand that exists before this token and before this platform. Naturally, it's the tent pole for the whole thing, and therefore they need to participate on that level as well. And without the Claynosaurs, without the collection and the fans, you don't have Claynosaurs building the way it is. And without that journey, without Claynosaurs, you don't have Hebrew. And so it all cycles back into those Claynosaurs holders, but I'd prefer to say fans. I'll be obviously today, because of what Claynosaurs is, it's this digital first, digital collectible property that is Pokemon, but just a little bit behind that. And so predominantly it's collectors and therefore it's holders, but really it's fans, right?
How does staking loop in to what we're doing with Hebrew?
Well, going back to what I said, we want to reward people who are fans. So part of being a fan is not just buying something, putting in your wallet. The way our staking system works is, obviously you're accruing points that are saying, okay, I'm locked in and I'm here for a while and I believe in this thing. We also have the achievement system, which is an appendage to that or part of the same thing, which also distributes points. And the achievement system is sort of saying, well, look, actually, if you've collected a herd or a pod, or you've done these other things, that you went to this event or this badge, or you bought this plushie or whatever, those are also fan interactions that matter towards the measurement of how big a fan are you.
Yeah.
So actually, you'll see on the achievement system, I believe that the top holder is not the gentleman or the person who has the most Claynos. It's the person who actually has the most herds and the most sort of collectible,
it's total.
aspect.
It's total.
Right. And so that's with intent, because it's about the fandom aspect. And all of these things add to fandom. And we're going to plug more things into that so that you don't just have to be a holder and buy these sort of rather expensive digital assets. That's just where Clayno has come from. But, if you've done a thread, or you're rocking a PFP, or you've done user-generated content, or you're the first one to watch the show, or you're the first one to play the game, or you've participated materially in the brand, you bought the merch, you wore the merch, you took a picture, and then, Kim Kardashian took a picture with you and you have a Clayno shirt on, dude, that's huge. But that's huge. And so even Labubu got popular because, this
celebrity
K-pop
picked it up and
right. And that's mega, right? So these things should be rewarded. And so the fan intelligence system is going to have all of that. And so going to your, what are these staking and achievement system points? It's conferring the fan value you've brought into Claynosaurs. And it's basically what you would use to distribute that token.
And did you see Kobe's announcement that base purchased Echo this morning?
I think I've had 25 people share this with me.
Good. Good. So
they
purchased it for $325 million. The podcast was also scooped up. He sent it to me. I think John sent it to me too.
Yeah.
For $25 million for 8 episodes. No. Yeah. Echo was $375. Yeah, but the podcast was $25 itself. Over 8 episodes is the increment, whatever, millions per episode, pretty much, which is pretty nuts.
A buttload of money.
Yeah, it's obviously a lot of money. Does this, I'm going to be honest, I think ICOs were probably the best method to launch tokens, to be honest, over the course of, I guess, forever in crypto. They've had the most success rate, in my opinion. Does that happening this morning give us a better thesis for what we're doing at the Hebrew level?
I think it's obviously for Web3 folks, I think they see that and they're like, wow, bullish, but this is where the future, everybody in crypto is looking for the next meta, right? So I think in that regard, yeah, because people say, oh shit, this is the next meta, right?
Because Echo was doing all ICOs. It was all ICOs.
Right. And I think, I think it's a reemergence of that, right? And it's something where an ICO is just making a token live, right? And I get it. It's, there's different ways of doing that. There's the ICO, there's these pump fund stuff, and they're all kind of doing the same sort of thing in a different way. And obviously the ICO captures a more serious way of doing it. But ultimately it's the underlying that matters. What does the token represent?
Sure.
So I do think that in a way it's bullish as a consequence of the meta I described. So people are like, oh, what's Echo doing? They're doing these ICOs and they're doing them in a way that's a little bit more sustainable. And therefore, we're moving towards this more fundamentally oriented trajectory that crypto, I think we've always known will go towards. And in that sense, I can't control the meta in crypto Twitter or what people are thinking. Different things like this occur, and I think it's great timing because it's momentous, it's huge, and it points towards this directionality that we're also going, albeit in a very different way. When it comes to the Clay token, and it comes to how you launch that, yeah, it's going to be on platform, but it's going to be a claim, right? And then when it comes to these new IPs, one of the important things that you're solving for, like I said earlier, is not just the fan bit, which I think is momentous, but it's also this capital allocation part. So what I said earlier was the current risk proposal is asymmetric. That is to say, I cannot justify investing money into a project that I don't know the upside, the downside, the timeline, nothing. And everything is subjective, and it's impossible to invest in this asset class. So how do you solve that? What you do, and I'll describe it theoretically, and then I can go into the mechanics, is you want investors to commit capital and only get that capital distributed to the team, the creative team, upon recognizing that there's been success in that IP, right? I, as an investor, you as an investor, don't want to be putting money into a project that has 0 fans. You want to say, oh, I'm starting to see success. Okay, so now I'm happy to invest piecemeal, some part of it. So what the structure we're doing, and honestly, I was inspired by what Flying Tulip did in terms of this sort of like treasury, and then the investors get a put, and it kind of has this downside protection mechanic. So in the same way, what I've thought through is something in here is quite nice. And my view of it is you can get investors to invest in a treasury, like I just described, with stables. And maybe it's stables, maybe it's also Sol and Sui and these other things too. And then that pool of capital is protected for the investors who get a put in the same way that the Flying Tulip model works. And that means that now the creative team gets a small stream of this yield, right? And it might not be big, but it's enough. What the creative team needs is a little bit of signal that if I succeed, there will be money coming. And I have enough money to kind of do a few things now, which, by the way, for Klano, we bootstrapped this thing on the same premise for over a year. So it's not, and this is how, there is some degree of meritocracy. You got to earn the right to get capital. So, but knowing it's there gives you the idea that it gives you the purpose, and then the small trickle of yield. Then, as you prove you have audience, you would then release capital. So this is where this is different from the model I'm describing, is that in the same way, if the equity token holder who has this put option, that is to say at any point in time they can come back and get their stable coins, sells it in the secondary market, perhaps they made a return, which is the only reason you really sell it, above your floor price now. Okay, the put cancels. Instead of having that go towards buying back token, it would release funds for the creative team to now do more things along their business plan. And in another way, it would also release if that price action of the equity token hits predetermined benchmarks. So at 2x, 5x, 10x, whatever those may be. So you're basically saying, well, if my token starts at $1, well, I've doubled it to $2. Well, I think we have enough signal to release a portion of the capital so that now I can go and start doing this other thing. And then if it's 5x, okay, we got even more signal. Let's invest in this next thing. So you predetermine those things. So the team knows what they're working towards. They know they don't have a hiccup coming up. They just know they got to deliver, and then the capital comes. And for the capital providers, they're like, well, I'm not actually investing this. My capital is not at risk until I've got audience and demand that is actually proven through this market.
Yep.
And I think that's a really, really eloquent way of solving this problem of, well, I want to invest in these things, but I'm just unsure of where the audiences are. Right?
Are there any measures in place for, I guess, minimizing the downside of our investors, the risk, or even the fans?
That's exactly what I'm saying, is that on day one, the risk is infinite. So your money is sitting in a treasury. At any point, the only cost to you is your opportunity cost of that yield.
Yeah.
And at any point in time, as the team is sharing things, or maybe they're not sharing things, maybe they go quiet for a month, you just say, okay, screw it. I'm selling. I want my money back.
Yeah.
I got my downside protection. I'm done. And that in itself is signal for the team, because if the treasury starts reducing, they're like, oh shit, I got to fix this. Which is important. And that's kind of the same idea as like on the NFTs when we started, like, oh, maybe they're selling off. What's going on? We got to figure out what's going on and serve these people who are our fans, our investors. We got to make sure that everyone's happy. That's the whole point of the business. And that de-risks you on that side. Similarly, well, you are happy to invest as you de-risk. What is de-riskment when you think about IP, storytelling, brand building? It's like, well, if I know there's audience, community, people who want to see this thing, that in itself is de-riskment, right? So as the price goes up and I get more people into the token, more people excited by it, that is a proof point that people want to see this IP. I've de-risked that IP, and I release some of my treasury funds. Now, obviously, there's always risk at some point or another. You might have released all the treasury once you hit 20x or something, and then you put out a TV show or a movie and it tanks. Well, unfortunately, there's still risk in all things of this manner, but you've at least de-risked it to a point where it's more investable. Versus today, you have no signal at all.
I don't know how this would work, but like just thinking like the vision for Clano the past 4 years, Andrew, has been what? What's been the sole purpose of Clano the past 4 years? Like one word sentence.
Unearthing the greatest untold stories. Honestly, we wrote that down probably 2 years ago when we started thinking about it. And that was the question people always ask. Like, what is the ultimate objective? The ultimate objective is unearthing the world's greatest untold stories.
Yeah.
And like I described at the beginning of this pod, there is a huge vacuum of people who want to hear the stories or through whatever avenue. And there's a huge vacuum for people funding them. It's a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
And it lies in this inability to invest in it. And it lies in this, traditional economic thinking that doesn't include people that are part of the brand, but actually add value. And I think that, it's unlocked through what we've learned at Clano, but it's also unlocked through the advent of blockchain that makes these things possible. Because even that structure that I described, if you're going to set up a treasury in like real dollar terms in a real account, now you've got like a escrow account, you've got an administrator, unlocking the capital has all these like paperwork. The costs are probably bigger than the actual yield. It's a lot more barriers to entry to set that up. The average creative team can't do it. It's not scalable. This is where crypto unlocks it. Similarly, I think if you're going to reward fans, you could do this without crypto or without blockchain. But one of the principles I think that's very important is transparency. Like, why did Forte get, more token than I did? Or so if you have it all transparently on chain, people can hum and haw at the methodology, but it's all transparently there. This is in direct contrast to the current system in Hollywood, which is, doesn't apply itself at all to fans, but it's completely opaque, where your IP might fail, even though you've sold it or partnered with a big studio, but then they don't tell you anything. Or sometimes there's examples of this where your IP is successful at the box office and it's in the news, but the money doesn't trickle down to you as the original creator of the whole thing because of the way they structure things. So
you heard what happened with the first season of Squid Games, right? The creator got zip, by the way.
Yeah,
he got zip.
This is the same thing with like K-pop Demon Hunters. It's the same thing with Squid Games. I think even famously the third Harry Potter movie, which was successful, it was technically a loss or something like that. There's the industry is riddled with stories like this.
Yeah, I'm like nothing. Like not even a dollar.
The structure, my view is this: nobody in that industry are bad people, but it's because they
have no leverage. The creators have no leverage.
Well, typically they had no leverage, and I think today they do. But this is the thing, right? So from the beginning of studio entertainment, which is really in like the 1920s, it evolves into these. It's always gate kept, not on purpose, but because it required so much money to invest in a new property. I mean, you're talking about moving pictures. You need people to draw and flip through. Like, it just takes a lot of money. So big studios are established in that sort of like pre-depression era, and then you have World War II, but then you have the TV, right, in the 1950s, and I think that's another big thing where it's like, if you put any moving picture on a screen, which dude, it's gonna be successful because it's just crazy. Like, there's something moving inside this box in my living room that's wild, right? So it doesn't mean that the stories that were being told were bad, but there's distribution is so limited, and only so these big studios are able to actually have the money to do it. And everything they do is successful because it's such a new, crazy technology that everybody is enamored by. And that's kind of the same thing all the way through until the 90s, where movies get bigger and better, and you have the advent of VFX and 3D, and Pixar does that in the 90s, and then visual effects are kind of, let's say, George Lucas and Lucasfilm, and these guys kind of developed the VFX industry, and the movies you're watching go from these cool stories to these like visually incredible things, where you're like, holy moly! Like, watch the first Star Wars movie, which by the way is fantastic.
Yep.
But then look at the VFX now, and it's a world of difference, right?
Yeah.
So the technical progress is great. The amount of money to invest in it is really, really large. And all of these guys are great storytellers. You know, you don't need me to tell you, there's a million Disney movies that are freaking fantastic. But all of it is coupled with this lack of, there's no real risk. I mean, there is, but it's not where it is today. It's, I can take shots and have a big box office and sell DVDs and so on. Today, you don't have that distribution channel of DVDs or VHS, and your distribution is just so competitive. So these big studios have built themselves up over 80 years to a different end. And people often ask me, like, do you just think Disney and Netflix are stupid? No, by no means are they stupid. Like, not even in the least bit. We talk to big studios all the time. It's the infrastructure that they've built for themselves is actually, it's so big that you cannot do what I'm describing. And these are often publicly traded companies where it's going to be a really tough time explaining to the public, you know, oh, by the way, we're giving away equity to these fans. Like, it just doesn't coincide with the infrastructure, the regulations that they're stuck under, and the like what their current shareholder base. I what I do think though is that the system we're building, it doesn't necessarily exclude these big studios. I think right now nobody is doing the prospecting, right? Like, nobody is doing this original IP prospecting, casting a wide net and kind of, going an inch deep everywhere and saying, where's the gold, right? Like, those studios aren't built for that. This system is built for that. And like I said, the great IPs were like, oh, I think we're hitting gold here. Let's go from 1 inch down to 2, 3, 4, many feet down. Okay, I like this one. Hebrew Studios do it. But eventually we're going to unearth way, way more great original IPs. And, those studios still have the capacity, the talent, the ability to bring these things to life. Disney and Warner Brothers and Netflix, they're going to come and say, oh, well, if Hebrew is where great original IP is coming because they're prospecting all the land, which is something that we can do, well, I'm going to dip into that pool and start participating in these new original IPs. And so it ends up being this prospecting layer where you've de-risked these original IPs to a point where they can go in and invest in them. And that's a win for everybody, where if you do want to go from this prospecting level to a movie and have a $200 million budget in it, well, then Disney is quite good at that, right? And that is something that requires a high degree of production expertise and management and so on and so forth. So, those guys will have the opportunity to dip into this system that serves this purpose. And it's basically a bridge between their infrastructure that never had to deal with this and prospecting for them.
And on this topic, Nick's goal, not Nick's goal, but like Nick's positioning and like authority in the obviously the wide company ecosystem has changed in a great way. Since the first time I came to the office, like Nick was doing one thing, now he's doing a whole other thing. I don't think we've mentioned this a lot publicly, what he's doing and why he's doing it. Do you want to get into it? Want to unpack it?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like I said earlier, Nick was the founder of Cranosaurs. And he brought the team together. He managed that team creatively. And then actually one of the questions that was really tough for us when we were saying, well, we want to scale this, was like, how do we get like more Nicks? Like we need no, but it's like Nick is like this creative talent.
Let's digress. What's Nick's top 3 skill sets?
I think Nick's top 3 skill sets actually are not creative. I think it's his ability to marry the creative work that he understands and his work as well into like a commercially viable product, right? So I think that's one of the main talents. The second one is that Nick is maybe one of the best BD people on the planet. He's so likable. He's immediately recognizable. He's so easy to talk to. Like, there's nobody on the planet that I've ever met, I've known him for 25 years, who wouldn't want to have a drink with Nick. Like, Nick is just such a likable person.
That's very true.
And that's because he's just an awesome guy. But from a BD perspective, it makes him really, really good at, going out and bringing in these relationships and also disarming people. Because I think sometimes, like, it's not that I'm not charming or unable to do that, but Nick has an immediate
It's not forced. It's not forced at all.
He has an immediate ability to disarm people. And I think it's also because his background is creative. So right off the cuff, my background is private equity. So right off the cuff, if I tell you what I'm doing, they're like, oh my God, like this guy is going to eat my lunch.
Gotta be careful around this guy.
Right. And so Nick has this great ability to disarm, not because people need to be disarmed, or because he has, he means any harm, but the exact opposite. So he's really great at BD. And then the third thing is that now we have him out doing all of this sort of speaking engagement stuff. He's on panels, he's doing different keynotes. And it's funny because Nick is so, like, I've known Nick, like I said, for 25 years. So I've seen him speak since we were in grade 9, doing a book report in front of 20 people, all the way through to now doing it in like these like sort of bigger avenues. And I think, you know, naturally everybody is sort of like, what's the biggest fear is like stage fright, which the funny thing is that I've never, even in grade 9, all the way through to today, ever seen Nick display any degrees of stage fright or inability to speak publicly. He's so good at it. He's so natural. And one of our teachers back in high school had said to us, she's like, look, anytime you're doing public speaking, just talk to the crowd as if you're talking to your buddy. Like, talk to them like you're talking to your friend, like we are now, or talk to them like you're in the playground talking about like the show you guys all watched last night. And Nick does that so well, whether it's because of that heuristic from our teacher or because he just naturally does it, I don't know. So I think he's really good at that. And I bring up the stage fright thing because he doesn't have stage fright, but every now and again he's like, oh, I'm nervous. I'm like, dude, come on, I know you better than you know yourself. Those nerves, one, being nervous is good. It means you care. If you weren't nervous at all, it would mean you don't give a shit. But two, I know Nick well enough to know that the moment he steps up on that stage or has to do the thing, he just flies like, you know, a bird who didn't think it had the wings, and it just goes into the sunrise, you know? So that was maybe a little bit more of a dramatic analogy, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, so what's Nick doing today? Like more so day to day now.
So, yes, I gave you Nick's top 3 skills. I think those skills translate into what he was originally doing, which is bringing the team together, the people person that people like, driving the strategy at the creative end for Kleno. And then once I jumped in, you know, he gave me all the biz stuff, which frankly wasn't like he was doing them. I think he just knew they needed to be fixed, didn't know where to start. But he also empowered me with like, this is Andrew, the private equity kook that might scare you guys, but this is one of my best friends. He's not going to hurt. So he empowered me to manage that team really well. Now, I can't manage a creative team in the way he can. So he sat here and continued to manage a creative. But as we built up the Klenosaur's arm, we now have Jervis, who's the executive creative director of Kleno. We've got a team that's, you know, led by Sarat on the head of production. We've got Seb in animation. We've got Sed on like art direction. So that team is really well built up. And so Nick actually doesn't need to be on the Klenosaur side. Of course, they always will ping him. There's always Nick getting his ideas in there and so on and so forth. But that's part of, a lot of the people I just mentioned are part of the founding team. They know, like Jerv designed the first Klenos and all this kind of stuff. So they self-operate. So over the course of a few years now, Nick is less on Kleno, albeit always a resource there, always inside of that pool. It's also a baby for him, so it's not like he just left at a daycare and never came back. But he's out doing, you know, the public distribution of what is Klenosaurs, what is Hibu. And so even now, he was at MIP Junior, he was in Turin for another conference. He's flying out to Japan later this week, and then he's going to be in San Diego, I believe, or LA for another conference. He's working the crowd. He's getting out the word to creatives, to investors, to the world that like, this is a thing that you guys need to participate in. And, you know, I filled in for him at one event that was here in Ottawa, animation conference here. So he was overseas.
You were speaking, right?
Yeah, I was on a panel. And so Nick, traditionally it would have been a one that Nick goes to, but because it was close by, Nick was overseas, I went and did it. I'll tell you just from that firsthand experience, dude, the room was full. People want to hear what we're talking about. And, you know, after that, I wouldn't say the room swarmed me, but like a lot of people, like, okay, I want to tell me this, tell me that. Oh, how did you do this? Oh, can we get in touch?
Why is there, I hate, I'm going to ask this, but not in a bad context. Why is there this immediate trust? Like immediately when you guys speak, there seems to be this like immediate trust that would take, you know, years to build through rapport. It just happens instantaneously.
Well, I think, you know, like I said, Nick is charismatic. I think I've got some degree of that as well, but it's not just the person. I think also it's the world in which we operate, where all of the big studios have eroded their trust, right? They've eroded their trust because of these previous circumstances of Hollywood accounting, you know, buying and shelving IP that for some creators, it's like their baby. It's like you left your kid at daycare or you put them in boarding school and then they come back to pick them up and they're like,
yeah,
actually, they're kind of stuck here forever now. So, yeah. Right. It's like, so they've eroded their trust as a consequence of Hollywood accounting. And then I think also one of the things that, to my eye, seems to be happening, especially in the animation sector, and I've even told this to Nick and friends of his and ours 15 years ago. We used to be roommates when we were early part of our career for a couple of years. And whenever I would talk to the other animators or even kind of like, meet them at like after work at the office or whatever, I'm like, so you guys are like just frame by frame pushing out this animation, but it's like someone else's vision and you just have to follow these strict rules. I'm like, this doesn't really sound creative to me. This sounds kind of like a sweatshop almost. And they're like, yeah, I mean, there is some space for creativity inside of the animation, but you're largely bringing someone else's vision to life. And of course, there's certain projects that where you are like, oh my God, this is sick, I want to work on it. But there's also a lot of crap that people don't really want to work on, and they just do it as a job. And so I think for a large portion of the industry, while they got into the sector because of their creative talent, the way it operates because of these big projects is that you're actually a small piece or a cog in a bigger machine where your creative talent is not actually being used or given the place to shine. And I think that's a really disheartening place to be, because I think you're like, in a sense, you've been lied to, right? Like, oh, you're an artist, you're a creative. And when I think of what artist means and creative means, it means you have the liberty to kind of explore that talent. And I don't think the sector allows them to do that. Again, not for any bad reason, but just because the way it's been built up. So there's a disheartenment in that sort of lie, if you will. And I don't think it's someone who lied on purpose, but it's just the way it ends up working. And so a lot of those creators don't want to work at a big studio. They'd love to bring their own dreams to life. And so that's kind of this double-edged sword. Oh, there's a lot more competition on the distribution front, but it's going to be completely meritocratic, where you can bring your ideas to life. And that's what Hebrew platform and the whole studio is meant to empower. So that's why people come to us, because when we take a creator-first approach, like our Claynosaur's team and founders that are predominantly creative folks, they own the majority of this company, as they should. This is in direct contrast to buying your idea, putting you at the bottom of a waterfall, if anything at all, and then flying away and never talking to you again for many, many years. And then maybe in the future something happens. We're creative first. Even when we talk about like Nobody Sausage and working with Gael, it's the same thing. He's got all these opportunities with studios, but we're like, no, Gael, we don't want to take your baby from you. What's going to make this IP great is your creative talent. Like, it's your baby. Why would I exclude you from that? So it's being this creative first approach.
Yep. And you got a meeting in 15 minutes. I don't want to take you from that. I probably got to wash up first. Anything you want to say?
I gotta wash up. Am I dirty?
No, I mean, like, go to the washroom, get a bike, get in Arizona, get a Red Bull.
Arizona. Got my water. I appreciate the time and thinking.
Yeah.
Anything I want to finish off with?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like we touched on everything, but I would say, this podcast is coming out after the announcement, I assume.
The day of.
The day of. Well, there's going to be more announcements coming. So the day of, obviously, there's going to be. Check out my profile. I'm going to put a one-pager up that I read earlier. Maybe it's going to be different from what I read, but I think it's going to.
I might even quote to your one-pager. Actually, I'll probably do that. I'll probably quote tweet the pod with your one-pager.
Possibly. That's great, and I think that's kind of like the heart and soul of this. But behind that, there will be more announcements on new IP partnerships, on new hires, which we've got a big. I can't. There's not enough bigs in. The biggest you can possibly imagine hire coming in that I think we're announcing shortly thereafter. And then even like the sort of tokenomic stuff we touched on here, I've given you guys a really good picture of what it should look like and what the ideas are.
Yeah.
I've got, you know me, I've got paperwork on this that is, I've gone down a rabbit hole where I might take like a 130 page, white paper, post that, but then synthesize it in a much shorter version that's more
digestible
for people.
John, he's been workshopping this for months. Like,
what I do though? I don't want to say an academic approach, but like every time I write something, then I read it back, and then I'm like, oh, like here are the places where someone could put a hole into it, right? So like I kind of steal, man. I negotiate with myself, and so then I highlight it. I put a note to draft. Okay, got to address this, and then in addressing that issue, I kind of give birth to a whole new section. So I'll give you an example. Like I'll talk about an example that is kind of funny. So part of the whole theory of what I'm describing suggests that investing in the entertainment business at all is a worthy endeavor. And for that to be true, we have to recognize that the entertainment business is actually a non-productive asset class. That is to say, it doesn't go towards sustenance. It doesn't go towards shelter. It doesn't go towards these things that we traditionally need to work for throughout the history of time. So the question is, like, are we just at a top cycle economically where we have the liberties to invest in this sector that eventually will erode? Actually, and then so you go back in history and you'll find that the top cycle for ancient Greece or ancient Rome or even like, Italy and the Renaissance, the top cycles are obviously are often marked by these momentous and elaborate spending on entertainment or, lavish buildings, museums, whatever the things are. And you're like, well, that's not sustainable. And then the collapse of the empire occurs. And that's a consequence of how they grew the economy and what they had actually achieved. That was not a sustainable growth trajectory. But if you go towards today and you think about it, we live at a time that actually has an immense increase in productivity since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, then empowered by the computing revolution. And now you've got AI. And you can see this on like a GDP per capita chart where it's just like a flat line and then in the last sort of 100 years, it flies up. You see this in poverty rates where just 50 years ago, extreme poverty rate globally was 44%. Today, it's like 8 or less than that percent. So you have actual economic numbers that say, well, wait a second, this is not a lavish spending for a small few people that are very rich while everybody else is poor. Actually, the entire economy has risen. And sure, you still have some wealth disparity, but on average, everybody's living a lot better, and it's empowered by this increase in productivity. So you can see, by virtue of what I'm talking about, the rabbit holes I've gone down in terms of the history, in terms of the economics, in terms of the sustainability of the underlying entertainment sector. All of that I've unpacked, and I've kind of sectioned it out. And when I zoom out and read this white paper, I'm like, holy moly! Like now it's like I was saying as a joke to you or someone else, is like, this is like a Nobel laureate style white paper where I'm actually dissecting every single bit of whether or not a non-productive asset class is a feasible thing. And where I end on that point, which is theory today and will only be, told through time, is that I do think that for thousands of years, the economy has had to invest and be productive in the categories that are largely sustenance. And today, because sustenance is not actually a necessity anymore. I mean, it's a necessity, but it's not the resource that's going to be lacking abundance. We still have some places to solve here. I'm not suggesting that people are all well off everywhere, but the trajectory is sustainably much, much higher in the different direction. That on some trajectory in the future, the resources that are actually the most scarce are going to be these things that are not sustenance, but are for the improvement of human life, right? And it's this, what we consider consumer discretionary spending, which is usually something where you're like, well, the economy is not doing well, we stop spending on these things. Well, we see all kinds of different indicators in the financial markets and the luxury markets and these non-productive asset classes that go to show that actually there is a huge asset class that actually makes sense for the betterment of human life. And that's something that through the increase in productivity and human progress, which is, we live at an interesting time, which has really occurred in the last 100 years, is actually the future of where I think capital formation, where I think investment begins to accrue in more in a more real and substantial way.
You got to tweet a graphic, by the way. I'm expecting you to tweet a graphic of like everything in the next few months.
I tell the production people here, I'm like, God, so many ideas for graphics. I need my own graphic designer. Honestly,
I think I know it. Yeah, I know a guy that does some stuff like that.
I'm very particular. Have you ever seen those videos? I think I mentioned you guys, like the Ray Dalio, like how the economy works kind of thing.
Yes.
Which are great videos. Whether or not we agree on his thesis is a different question, but the video themselves is great. I want to do something like that to explain this token and the methodology.
Can it be done in person or over camera?
I want to do like the motion graphic style that Ray does.
Okay. We'll sync on that. I think we can get this done. We'll sync on this.
Well, I spoke to Strat about it, so we're gonna see what Will says when he's back later this week.
We'll sync up. We'll sync on this. Okay. This is probably going out this week if everything goes right. I'm not gonna say a day because things happen, but ideally this week it's gonna go out. Andrew, I'll see you in the trenches. This has been a good one. You have a meeting in 5 minutes. I'll let you go to that. I don't want to take you from the guys.